So one of the things that was said in the sort of before we hit record was just there was this teaching our clients how to treat us. And yeah, sometimes our clients treat us not well. I mean, sometimes we treat our clients not well, and sometimes it goes the other way. And I just want to underline for folks that it's important that we teach our clients how to treat us. And there's a few levels of that. One is if they're mistreating you, it's probably because they're miserable. And why should everybody be miserable? You don't need to be miserable too. That's two miserable people in the world. So even if you can't fix them, there's one less miserable person by you dealing with it. And also, of course, just if you're going to be working with them long term, if these are patterns and they don't get nipped in the bud right away, they're likely to continue. I remember seeing the meme. I said, there got to be a point in my life when I realized that how's it go? The red flags were red lights. It's just okay. And sometimes it's very small, but that's how they become big things. So for our own well-being, if we're going to work with that client long term, this stuff does need to be dealt with and addressed. I mean, if it just doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel good. And addressing it might mean you say, look, I can't work with you. It might mean that you have a conversation with, there's a lot of ways it could, if it goes unaddressed, it's going to cause trouble. But here's the other one, and this is the big one that I want to underline for everybody. The reason to engage in conversations with our clients about bad behavior is not for us. It's for the next person they work with. This is a kind of a wider, more village-minded way of looking at it. They will stop working with you at some point, and then they're going to be on somebody else's doorstep. And Stephen Jenkinson, many of you know I've studied with, I'd heard this story, it was kind of secondhand, but apparently it was at the school. There was some young man there who was inappropriate with women in some way that the women felt uncomfortable. And Stephen let him have it one night. I think what he'd talked about it obliquely around a fire in a way that most people probably understood, but allowed the young man to save face. And then I think it was the next night the young man came and he brought it up himself. But Stephen said to him, he's like, he said, that kind of behavior is the reason I can't stand next to a woman in an elevator and her alone and her feel safe. And it's like, if I didn't think you would just go down the road and do this somewhere else, I would have kicked you out of here so fast. But somebody has to deal with this. I had so I've got my day-long workshop, the Marketing for Hippies 101 that you're all familiar with. And I got tired of it. You just get bored of hearing yourself tell the same jokes. You get bored of hearing yourself go over the same content again and again. And I just hit that point. And I will just say, that's just in the path of mastery, we hit plateaus. And that doesn't mean stop. Just because you're bored with it doesn't necessarily mean you stop doing it. But I got bored and I did want to mix it up, which I think is a good idea generally. And it makes me think I was in Edinburgh doing a workshop, and the woman who hosted me, did I tell you the story about doing my workshop backwards? Yeah, so that's one way to, anyways, had to do the workshop twice. There was some same people in the audience, so I just did it backwards the second time. It was just fun for me. But I thought to mix it up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out the recording of this workshop, and they can watch the recording, and then the whole day will be Q&A. Way more fun for me. And frankly, I think more useful. Now Susan and I figured it out. It's a fairly consistent 11% no-show rate on my day-long workshops. People pay the deposit and just don't come. But I did this day-long workshop twice with this deal. I said, look, you pay the deposit, you'll get the full footage, and then we'll have Q&A. And it was a 50% no-show rate, 50. So half the people didn't come. Now, keep in mind that this was in my living room. So I was doing 10 people per day because that's about what I could fit in my living room. So now that means there's 5 people there. So, and some of them wrote, and some of it was in my mind legit, like I am so sick right now. But one of them was, oh, I was at a wedding and we just stayed up really late, and I just can't make it. And some of it just felt terrible. And so, as it often is, when I get pissed off about something, I wrote a blog post about it or make a video. And I put the link to it. It's marketingforhippies.com/rice-bowl. It's in the chat for you there. And I sent it to them. I sent it to all the people who no-showed and just said, I think you should read this. To which the response was, yikes. But what I was trying to do was make the case to them. It's like, you think your absence has no consequence, but it actually does. And so the cold notes of it, I just laid it out for them. I said, first of all, I wait till people are there before I start. So now we start late. That's number one. Number two, I'm cranky when I start. So it's I have to get over that hump. So just for me and for the group, it's not as good. Number three, I make less money now. I'm making half the amount of money I would have because you chose not to come. Fourth, there were other people who might have wanted to come and they didn't get to come because, etc. And fifth, I don't know if this was in the blog post, but it's like, do you think I'm going to make this offer again? Which was an incredibly generous offer? Probably not, because of how it was treated. And so that's on you, or you have a role in that. It's just helpful. At the Orphan Wisdom School, in the first session, Stephen is cranky. He's just extra surly. But I think what he's doing is he's just shaking the tree. It's like, if you can't deal with this, go away. Like, this is as bad as it's going to get. But he's setting the boundaries. He's setting the parameters of the school, because there are people who come who are they're in workshop mode, meaning Stephen works while they shop. They're in this consumerist mindset of everything's there for them. Chop, chop. Can you get to the cathartic part? This workshop isn't what I'm wanting. It's not giving me what I need. And treating, they can turn us into vending machines where they put in money and wisdom pops out, is how they imagine it. And that shit has to stop. And again, not just for us, because it's miserable to be on the receipt. Somebody saying they're pushing the button. Like, God, give me catharsis. Where's the somebody has to stop it, because again, if we don't deal with, I'm not saying we have to, but somebody has to at some point, because otherwise they go to the next person and they do the same thing. Stephen told this story, let's briefly, but he got asked to come to this day of prayer, and there were people from all these traditions there, and Stephen ended up, there was a cafeteria, and of course they all eat different diets, so they kind of decided that the one thing that everyone could eat was this green mush. Like, it's vegan, it's just kale blended, like whatever, and it was just, and Stephen sat down, and he sat down next to this Buddhist fellow, in the robes, and clearly from Tibet. And Stephen said, what do you think about the food? And he was saying, there's not good. And anyways, there's a bit of small talk, and then the fellow looked at Stephen. He said, so why do you teach? Good question. Big question. So Stephen met it as best as he could with another question. He said, why has you ask? And the Tibetan fellow got really quiet. He said, because here they eat teachers. And a year later, that teacher was nowhere to be found. It seems he'd quit the biz. So it's just good to get this. He had survived China and what they did to Tibet. He'd lived through that and survived it. And then we destroyed him. Because in this society, we eat teachers. So whatever we can do to get some kind of decorum and good behavior, it's a benefit not just to us, but to every other teacher they ever work with. It may mean they stop working with us, but they'll be a bit more courteous down the road. So anyways, I just wanted to get that out because I think it was spoken to in different ways in the lead up to this, both with Leah's, hey, the way you emailed me, that wasn't cool. We don't need to do that. We can shine a bit brighter than that. And with Erica stating a price, but not buckling on it. Because we can teach people that's like, oh yeah, you can just haggle people down. Get the best deal from your teacher before you chew them up and spit the wrapper of them out and move on to the next teacher. Yeah, so there you go. So bless all of you who set boundaries with your clients. It's a real gift. Yeah. Okay, I'm scrolling through. See if there's anything. Excuse me. So Matthew had a question. Because he can't chat on the audio, and it went directly to me. He said, I know the feeling and experience the vending machine for desired wisdom. Any ideas on how to deal with that within myself and within potential workshop attendees? Well, let's turn this into a group thing, because I think there's a lot of wisdom in this group. You heard my sermon on it. So I think the question, if I'm understanding it, Craig, is both when there is bad behavior, how do you deal with it internally? Like your own reaction to it is how I'm reading that. I may be reading that wrong. And then also, how do you practically, let's say you're doing a workshop and something like that comes up. What do you do exactly? Yeah. Okay. So I think I've got it. So let's just take a few minutes in the chat, because you've all taught workshops, I imagine, or you've been to workshops. So how do we deal with this in a way that upholds, being a good host and courteous, but also how do we address it practically? Sunday was saying, here they eat teachers is an interesting one, because it seems to me that part of the dynamic is also being passive in the teaching and making the teacher into some sort of a mini god. Right. Yeah, this is two-sided. You can let yourself be eaten. That's number one, as the person teaching. You can just let yourself be consumed. But you can also, as the student, lift the teacher up. And, but it's interesting. I mean, it's a mini god, but it's not a full god. You wouldn't try to eat a god. But there's something about this commodifying. They look at us as a commodity, as a machine. Okay. Yeah, as Shweta was saying, thank you for uplifting this. The capitalist shelf shopping mentality is so rampant. The root cause is the education system. Eastern philosophy is flipped. Teacher-student relationships are sacred, full of detachment and so much more. Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. How do we bring some sacredness back into the, yeah, you're a coach. Okay, you're not a full-on spiritual teacher, but still there's something sacred there in that relationship. And how do we keep that present? Michelle said, for me, boundaries are about what I will and will not do, never telling somebody else what they should or shouldn't do. Beautiful. I will let people know, ouch, that things didn't feel good when things feel shitty, or when people do shitty things. Yeah. I mean, Stephen would say that a number of times. One of the ways he says, like, just like, I'm not bulletproof up here. I'm a human being up here. Like, let's just not lose sight. Like, if you think just because I'm at the front of the room that this isn't television, I can see you. What you're doing has an impact on me. It's a two-way thing. It's good to humanize it. Simon said, sometimes when it's clear that everyone in the room is uncomfortable, I will turn it over to the group. Just give the group space and permission to voice how they're feeling. Yeah. It's a crapshoot, but that can be very powerful. Yeah, you let the group find its own goodness. By the way, the best book I can recommend on group facilitation is called The Tao of Leadership by a fellow named John Hyder, and it's the Tao Te Ching translated for group facilitation, and it's just incredible. Can't recommend it highly enough. Yeah. Jan Blake said, set out a list of agreements for everyone to sign up to. Yeah, that can be very powerful, especially when it's your thing. It's like, well, you're in my space, and so these are the rules of the home. These are the house rules. And maybe other people need more rules, and we can discuss that. But it's good for people to know what they're getting into. Yeah. So you can do it explicitly up front, or it can be, it comes up and it's like, okay. I suppose that's the two ways fundamentally: upfront agreements or teachable moments, where it's like, I wasn't sure if we needed to talk about this. Because of course, one of the challenges with the agreements is sometimes we can, there's too many pre-frames. I remember a friend of mine, Kumba from Mali in Senegal, she ran the Institute for Popular Education over there. And I used to take like an hour or two to set out agreements and pre-frames, and here's how we approach things at these events, these jams. And one day she looked at me, she's like, Ted, like, do you need to say all of these things with these people? And I was like, and she just was like, look at the people you're with in this group today. And the next event I was at, I looked around the group and I was like, I don't need to say any of this. I could tell it was there, but then there still may be a teachable moment. You get blindsided. You didn't see it coming, and there it is. There's that. Yeah, Leah said, you can set guidelines and expectations ahead of time. Jane Friedman does this nicely with her workshops for writers and authors. Okay, so we've got an example there. So janefriedman.com, the-mission-of-my-online-classes. So you can see an example of that. It's really helpful. And by the way, the thing I would also say about boundaries is, and agreements, is we probably only need them if something has happened more than once. Shit's going to go weird all the time in unusual ways, and you can't like have an agreement for every, it just becomes insane. You take 3 hours covering every eventuality that's probably not even going to happen, and it's no good. But there are the things that keep coming up. Oh, every time this comes up, so I should probably address it. And you can address that, and I probably would, in the materials up front, and sometimes if you put it in the materials and it still comes up because people didn't read it, then you have to have other systems. So this is the filtering thing. You can do the check this box if you understand this, check this box if you understand this. The last few of my online Pay What You Can day-long workshops, there've been people at the end who's like, oh, I didn't know there was Pay What You Can at the end. I thought the $25 was the Pay What You Can. I was like, what the fuck? And I went to my sales there, and I realized I thought it was clear. Reading it over, I was like, this makes total sense to me, but I thought I just need to make this clearer. I added a few more things that they had to check to just to make it so clear, because it's not kind for them to get surprised. They feel bad. So if things are recurring, it's worth thinking about. In my workshops, are there consistent troubles that happen? And can I either filter out or just make sure people know what the rule is, what the agreement is, what the boundaries are, and so that's the explicit way. And again, you can do the teachable moment thing, where it's like, it's just, and there is a case to be made for that. It's more powerful if you do it in the moment. It will stick with the group more if it's done in the moment. So there's that. Katrin said, I sometimes establish a community agreement with a group. Here are things that may come up, and here's how we will engage with it or not engage with it. That's great. Right. On these issues, we'll engage. On these ones, we don't. In this situation, here's our process. That's very helpful to know. That can really help people be at ease. Yeah. Pam said, addressing it practically in the group, check in with the person that I've understood their point by paraphrasing it back to them. If yes, throw it open to the group and then add my comments at the end, right? So that can be good. I mean, it depends on the group, I suppose, but that is a helpful thing, just to make sure, like, wait, am I reacting as the facilitator? Because I've gotten caught in this a number of times. I react, and after I'm done my little petty tirade, they're like, that wasn't what I was saying. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Incredibly embarrassing. So yeah, it's good to make sure we're not being reactive. Just like, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Am I following it right? Is this what you're saying? Okay. Yeah. Then you may turn it over to the group. Yeah. It's also, by the way, I would say it's legit as a leading something to say, thank you for that. Let me sit on that. Let me get back to you after the break or this evening. We'll talk about it. You can delay things. It doesn't have to be handled in that moment. Yeah, Jan's saying that way everyone is responsible for the space, not just the leader of the group. Right. If you right, if you set out a list of agreements for everyone to sign up to, it's not just you. And that's a good distinction to make between rules and agreements. The rules are the things you're imposing. The agreements are the thing everyone signs up to. And that second one is a better dynamic, I would say. Pam was also saying, within myself, if I can't hold it, right, announce a comfort break to give myself space to process and come back to the group fully conscious. Good idea. Knowing your boundaries and worth, be clear, comfortable with your own boundaries and guidelines, be open, vulnerable, real. Yeah, I mean, it's legit to just say, look, y'all, I'm triggered right now. I just can't. We're going to have to come back to this. Yeah. Michael said, there's a story I've heard, I'm thinking it might have been from you, about a university president who told a landscaper to wait until the next year to complete the job of paving the path to see how the people would actually traverse the campus, right? Because you see these paths going weird angles through things. And this is one of the things they've done in civic planning, and I imagine at universities too, is over the winter, they just look at in the snow, what are the trails people make? Like people always seem to cut across the road from here to here. So then that's where you pave it, or a park. Everyone walks this way. So that's where you put the path because people are already doing it. So a similar thing with a group. You look at how is the group behaving? Figure out what actually happens in your workshops before you go about setting down the pavement of these rules or agreements. Like which ones are needed? Because otherwise you just pave the whole park. It's like, well, you got it all covered, but that's the problem. You've got it all covered. Yeah. The name of the facilitation book, thank you, Leah, for posting it. Yeah, it's The Tao of Leadership. Highly recommended. Dr. Doug said every student every student that verifies the teacher is implicitly waiting for them to make a mistake. Yeah. Yeah. And fall from grace so they can express their disappointment with them. It's just a truism of that projection. Yeah. I remember my friend Akila Shirils, he called it necessary betrayals.
Yeah.
It's just built into the dynamic. Yeah, they're waiting for you to screw up. Probably true. But it's also that's the trust building moment too. Hey, we screwed up and then we apologize. If there's something to apologize for and make amends, and that's where the trust is really deepened. Okay, I'm just scanning through here. That's beautiful. Jan said, I begin each session by saying, together we will develop the art of listening, the art of giving away, the art of using wisdom, the art of letting go. Beautiful. So you get an overall frame of like, these are the arts that we're going to be developing. And so whatever comes up today, that's a chance to practice those arts, you know? So then it's capacity building. It's like, okay, so how do we bring the art of listening to this? How do we bring the art of the giveaway to this? Or what is wisdom in this situation? And then you ask something of the group so that it has to appear in them. Because it doesn't unless we ask. Like people have all these capacity, it's like in high school, those volcanoes with the baking soda and the vinegar. It's our asking something of the group is the vinegar that catalyzes something in them that isn't there until we put the burden on them and ask. Yeah. Right. Jan said, also when I feel triggered, I will push back with the question, what do you mean? Right. Good questions out. What do you mean? Paraphrasing. Am I understanding? How are you defining this word? Because boy, isn't it often true that we have completely different definitions of words. And when you realize their definition, it's like, oh, we're saying the same thing using different words or not, but then you can know. And Yana said, I have a tangential question. I had a client who had been out of communication ask for a refund. And when I said I wanted to talk with her and ask what time works, she said yes, then has not set up a time. That's on her, I would say. Yeah, just wait for her to reach out. Yeah, you made a request. Simon also said, I often send a pre-work video to watch from Otto Scharmer on the 4 levels of listening. It seems to prep people well and set up a culture for the workshop. That's great. I've got a little video here we can all check out. I think I'll, don't mind if I do. Snatch that. Yeah, that's great. So that's another way you can do it, right? Is you written things, but also here's some videos. Watch these. Please watch these before you come. And it sets the tone and the tenor and all that. And then the good thing is, if you do that and something comes up, you can say, oh, this was covered. You were asked to read this. So, it's like, it's not that you were the one out of integrity. It's not, it's like, okay, you didn't do that. And then that's a teachable moment too. In the meantime program, there were a number of people like, where's the workbook for this week? Where's the workbook? And now, first of all, there's a lesson on my side. How can I make sure the workbooks are more accessible and in the right places? But the reality is they did get the workbooks. They were in the resources. Like it was, if they read things, it wasn't a mystery where to find this stuff. So I did take the lesson, and I'm like, okay, I've done my best on my end to make it even easier to find these things. But there was also a moment in the call where I just said, look, you're in the meantime. This means you got to be organized. That's part of what gets us into the meantime is we're cluttered. And so, there's a lesson here for you as the participant in this. Like I take the feedback, I'll improve on my end, but it's not all me. I suppose that's part of maybe where I'll wrap it up on this topic. It's important to really be clear what's mine and what's yours. It's like, yes, you're right. That's good feedback from me, but I'm not taking the burden off your shoulders of your responsibility for your part in this. That's still you. And I'm not going to rescue you from that. Yeah. Okay. So, so Doug was just clarifying. He said, many students approach healers and teachers as if they're quasi-gods and different from them and the rest of humanity. These people always scare me too, because they rob me of my humanity and set us up to play with their projections. Yeah. Well, I remember Stephen saying this a few times. He's just like, I'm not all the men that hurt you. I'm not your father. I'm not a guru. Like, I'm just not those guys. I'm not those bad experiences you had. Is like, I may fuck up in my own way, but I'm not them. So please don't bring that here. Okay, so now this thread is just insanely long with so many things. So if you have a question, if you can repost it, maybe you already have, but it's completely underwater in the turbulent rolling river of that extended commentary.